The tragedy of Eddie Murphy's life. They don't want you to know. In 1982, mainstream movies were jolted by the arrival of Eddie Murphy. In many respects, Richard Pryor had cleared the way for Murphy's ascent, preparing audiences for an iconoclastic, tough-talking, profane African-American comedian. Born in Brooklyn in 1961, Murphy had shot to fame as a cast member of TV's Saturday Night Live, often creating controversial characters such as the pimp Velvet Jones, the convict Tyrone Green, and the angry Gumpy. He also did a satirical takeoff on the character Buckwheat from the Our Gang series. Suppose you grew up watching Murphy chomping on a cigar as Gumby, or getting gunned down in a hail of bullets as Buckwheat on Saturday Night Live, or better yet, dropping F-bombs as the cool cat star of 48 Honor, Trading Places, and Beverly Hills Cop. In that case, it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that a whole generation out there has no clue just how funny and dirty he once was. When they think of Eddie Murphy, if they even think of him at all, it's as the donkey from the kiddie franchise Shrek or the once dangerous comedian desperately searching for laughs and fart gags and fat suits in the clumps. When Murphy first showed up on SNL in 1980, he was a raw 19-year-old Brooklyn kid with a 1,000-watt smile. He was also the closest thing the show had to a high-voltage live wire. Every time he showed up in a sketch, you had no idea what would happen because anything could happen. At a time when Lorne Michaels' late-night show could have gone off the cliff after losing its original cast, or simply drifted into sleepy irrelevance, Murphy single-handedly put the paddles on its chest and zapped it back to life. Not to sound dramatic, but there probably wouldn't be an SNL today if Murphy hadn't goosed it into its second golden age. As a star was being born on SNL, Hollywood was watching along with the rest of the country, fishing around for its checkbook. It didn't take long for Murphy to be lured out west to see if his lightning-quick chops would work on the big screen. Murphy made the brilliant buddy flick 48 airs and class-conscious comedy Trading Places back-to-back in 1982 and 1983. They were both enormous hits. In between, Murphy donned a red leather suit and served up the proudly profane stand-up concert movie Delirious. Here was a guy who could do it all. Unlike his role model, Richard Pryor, he was determined not to tone his comedy down for the movies. And in the few cases he didn't look as uncomfortable about it as Pryor always did. Then again, it's hard to look comfortable when you've got enough cocaine to kill a moose in your system. Murphy had become a pop culture phenomenon, and not insignificantly, also the first black movie star wholeheartedly embraced by white America. Even when he made bad choices, like 1984's dreadful Best Defense, he was smart enough to follow it up with a sure-for-formula hit like Beverly Hills Cop, even if that meant turning down co-starring with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters to do it. As Murphy's paychecks got bigger and bigger, he seemed to grow more remote and cold. His jokes lost some of their edges, as if they had been market-tested by his personal Grizz and .com yes-men. And judging by his brief foray into dance music and party all the time, there was no one around to say no. Murphy was still making some good movies. 1988's Coming to America is still a classic for sure, but he was also ladling out more and more toothless mush like The Golden Child, Harlem Nights, The Distinguished Gentleman. The list, sadly, goes on. Like all stars who start cashing too many checks with too many zeros too quickly, he seemed to lose his compass somewhere in the backseat of his stretch limo. These films weren't just painful to watch, they felt a bit like a betrayal. This is where the decade-long slide begins. When Murphy finally returned with The Nutty Professor in 1996, he was clearly a humbled version of his former self. It was as if, deep down, he knew he'd alienated his adult fans, so he had to cultivate a new generation of younger ones. People like to dogpile on Murphy's fat suits and fart jokes films, including the original Nutty Prof himself, Jerry Lewis, but many have a soft spot for them. Not because they're great, but because fans were happy just to see Murphy tiptoe his way back into the popular culture in something funnier than a vampire in Brooklyn. Eddie Murphy might have been less delirious and raw, but he was back on top again. I had stopped making movies in 2011, Murphy recalled on Marc Maron's WTF podcast in 2021. Because I was making these shitty movies, and it was like, this shit ain't fun. They giving me Razzies. I think these MFs gave me the worst actor ever Razzie. In 2010, Murphy was awarded the Razzie, a parody award for cinematic failures, for Worst Actor of the Decade. The snub came after the actor, who had been one of the biggest film stars in the world, fell out of favor with the public and began starring in a string of family-friendly movies that were both critical and commercial failures. Interestingly, the Razzies also recognized his comeback, awarding him the 2020 Redeemer Award for his role in Dolomite Is My Name, which was released in 2019. Murphy may be known for crass jokes, such as his fart scenes in the Nutty Professor movies, but he takes his reputation seriously. In 2007, he stormed out of the Oscars after losing the award for Best Supporting Actor to Alan Arkin. Murphy had been a favorite to win for his role in Dreamgirls, but it was rumored that the bad publicity surrounding his comedy Norbit ruined his chances. Indeed, Norbit won Murphy the Razzie for Worst Actor, Worst Supporting Actor, and Worst Supporting Actress for the 3 different characters he plays in the film: Norbit, his wife Rasputia, and Mr. Wong. A lot happened between 1984, when Murphy boasted on Saturday Night Live that he only agreed to star in the comedy Best Defense for the Money, and 1995, when comedian David Spade did a skit on that same show where he held up a photo of Murphy and said, "Look, children, it's a falling star. Make a wish." Murphy was so angry about the joke that he severed his decades-long ties with the TV show. What really irritated me about it at the time was that it was a career shot, he told the Rolling Stone in 2011. "It's one thing for you guys to do a joke about some movie of mine, but my career? And every joke has to go through all the producers, and ultimately, Lorne Michaels, Saturday Night Live producer or whoever, says, okay, it's okay to make this career crack." On Saturday Night Live's 25th anniversary special in 1999, Eddie Murphy was the show's only breakout star who refused to participate. He did not return until the 40th anniversary, appearing only to receive an ovation, not to make any jokes. But in 2019, he surprisingly agreed to host the Saturday Night Live Christmas program, which brought back his classic characters from the 1980s and joked about the controversial design of Sonic in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. The program, which gave the show its highest ratings in more than a decade, won Murphy an Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy. This is the last episode of 2019, but if you're black, this is the first episode since I left back in 1984, he said in his opening monologue. Eddie Murphy saved a beloved TV show and blazed a trail for black performers, all without a roadmap. Better to pay tribute to him for his great work than prosecute him for his flops and youthful offenses, wrote journalist David Camp in a 2020 article in The Atlantic. The report, titled "The Return of Eddie Murphy," recalled how Murphy took a stand against the lack of diversity at the Oscars while presenting the Best Picture Award in 1988. During his speech, he pointed out that only 3 black actors, Hattie McDaniel, Sidney Poitier, and Lou Gossett Jr., had won the award in 60 years. "I'll probably never win an Oscar for saying this, but hey, what the hey, I gotta say it," he said. Murphy starred in Saturday Night Live at a time when the show seemed doomed, but he was able to win over a new audience with his quick jokes, swearing, and quips about racism in America. In one of his most famous jokes, he talked about what the first black president would have to do to avoid being assassinated. While some leading black voices, such as director Spike Lee, accused Murphy of not being socially aware, his jokes from that time carry a surprising amount of political punch. Other jokes, such as his 1983 routine on homosexuality and AIDS, for which the actor later apologized, have not stood the test of time. Murphy's comeback is also important as he is one of the few remaining stars of his generation. Michael Jackson, and Prince, and Whitney Houston, those are my contemporaries. And they're gone, Murphy said in a 2020 interview with Vanity Fair. Following a large private dinner hosted by a group of black comedians, including Chris Rock and Chris Tucker, actor Kevin Hart remembered the silence, only broken by laughter, with which everyone listened to their idol, Eddie Murphy. "We shared a bond, but it was one of respect, looking at Eddie and going, 'You're the reason why we can sit at this table. These doors got kicked open because of what you did,' Hart told interviewer Howard Stern. Looking at American film comedy, it is easy to understand why comedians like Cat Williams consider Murphy to be a comedy god. As a comedic trendsetter and possessor of film and narrative agency, Murphy, especially during the 1980s, wielded the authority of independent film and stand-up comedy with the force of referent power. This referent power and its resulting celebrity allowed Murphy to become an iconic culture producer at a time when there were no other actors like him in either television or film comedy. This cultural production and subversive address of race, class, and culture, under the influences of Saturday Night Live, the affordable video cassette recorder, and the socio-economic conditions of the 1980s, defined a post-blaxploitation era of film and black performance that many considered to be the Eddie Murphy moment. To say that there was no one like him, one has to note that Murphy, as a self-styled, urban-focused young black male stand-up comedian, was physically and aesthetically different from the actors engaged in the formulaic traditions surrounding the mold of what have become classic 1980s Hollywood films. A gifted mimic and parodist whose television career pulled and prodded all things associated with the culture and history of the United States, Murphy accepted and frequently flaunted his African-American complexity through his comic embrace and disturbance of race, class, and culture. To this day, the significance of Murphy's impact is one of intentional action versus aggressive kismet or fortunate accident. His career, especially within the context of the Eddie Murphy moment, readily demonstrates canny intellect, leadership, racial and artistic inspiration, and immense talent. However, the level of his art is often called into question because of the populist orientation of his film, television, vocal, and stage work. The ludic Murphy approach to stand-up, television, and film comedy combined a gendered postmodern sense of race, class, and culture to form a pastiche, very much like that seen in the comedy of Richard Pryor. Like Pryor, Murphy's milieu is highly urban, driven by the stylistic verbiage and tones of 1970s blaxploitation films, and often defined by attitudes of skepticism and irony. Also, like Pryor, the genesis of Murphy's skill set was the small and intimate stage of the Black Comedy Club. However, unlike Pryor, before moving from the comedy stage to film, Murphy found a wider platform for his stand-up comedy and improvisational skills. Now, over the last 30 years or so, Eddie Murphy has enjoyed too much success and made too much money. His career became governed by a higher degree of difficulty, almost like we collectively started squeezing his strike zone in 1989 and never stopped. Ask anyone under 35 what they think of Eddie, and they'll probably say, "Hasn't been funny for 15 years." Ask anyone from 35 to 50 what they think, and they'll say either, "One of the funniest ever," or "Loved that guy, wish he stopped making so many shitty movies." We don't argue about Eddie, we don't celebrate him, we don't really do anything. You're not exactly going out on a limb by praising Eddie Murphy. It's much more interesting to say he sucks or that he isn't nearly as good as he once was. Ned, the actor could have shaped that discussion by giving more interviews, making a viral video or 3, grabbing meaty supporting parts in indie movies, returning to stand-up clubs, or doing anything else to shed that "hasn't been funny in 15 years" rap. Even an occasional Saturday Night Live hosting gig, something he could have ripped off in his sleep, would have done the trick, but the funny man hasn't been that aggressive, and he has his reasons for being that way. He swerved the other way publicly, taking seemingly safe roles and barely interacting with the media. Partly to protect his privacy, and partly because of an embarrassing incident in 1997 when his car was pulled over in the wee hours in a relatively seedy part of Hollywood with a transvestite prostitute in the passenger seat, and Eddie driving. He claimed to be giving her a ride, the usual Good Samaritan defense. Few believed him, and we never really heard from Eddie again. He just kept cranking out those kids' movies. But there is one thing people don't know about the Hollywood star. Until he reached fame, Eddie Murphy had a really hard time. Raised in Brooklyn, New York, the actor was abandoned by his father when he was just a child and died shortly after being stabbed several times by a mistress. His mother, meanwhile, fell ill with tuberculosis. So, both Murphy and his older brother Charlie were raised for the next year in foster homes until they returned to their mother and stepfather, a drunk who gave his last name a bad name. Despite the drama, Murphy took advantage of this time to, according to him, tan his sense of humor, camouflaging himself in it to get away from reality. Thus, he began to look at comedians like Bill Cosby and decided to become a comedian as well. The first sketches that brought him to fame were characterized by being very incorrect, ridiculing all kinds of groups such as African Americans, Italian Americans, overweight people, or homosexuals. In short, those were different times. His big break came when in 1980, he entered as part of the cast of Saturday Night Live, a program in low hours at that time that managed to revitalize thanks in large part to the work of Murphy. From that moment on, he did not stop gaining popularity, and the 80s became his conversion to a great promise in acting, starring in blockbusters such as Super Detective in Hollywood. Curious fact, he rejected Ghostbusters to star in this film, which would have changed the course of his story. But if in the 80s he was a promise, in the 90s he became a big star. Already one of the most sought-after faces in Hollywood, his cash did not stop increasing, up to the $15 million per film that he currently earns. Beyond the big blockbusters he starred in, his voice became so recognizable that animated characters were made in his image and likeness. Another thing that the actor is known for, not in such a good light, is his several failed relationships. The comedian has welcomed 10 children with different partners and has said there's no greater joy than fatherhood. Things happen in cycles, and right now, I'm in a cycle where there's no higher blessing than having a child, he said in January 2020, just months after his son Miles welcomed a daughter. There's no sweeter blessing than seeing your grandchild. Murphy's high-profile relationships include his romance with Whitney Houston, who was reportedly very enamored with the comedian, and his marriage to ex-wife Nicole Murphy, with whom he shares 5 children. The actor also welcomed children with exes Paulette McNeely, Tamara Hood, and Melanie Brown, who filed a paternity suit against the Coming to America star after he publicly questioned if he was the father of their daughter. These days, Murphy is settled with his longtime love and fiancée, Paige Butcher, with whom he shares 2 children. A source previously told People magazine that Butcher has a great relationship with Murphy's children from previous relationships. They are all about family. Paige is very close to Eddie's kids. They are a very special and happy family, the insider said, adding, "They vacation and spend holidays together. Paige loves being a mom and is very involved. She takes her daughter to the park and for play dates." While the late Whitney Houston is closely associated with her ex-husband, Bobby Brown, the singer pursued a relationship with Murphy in the mid-1980s and fell hard for the comedian. Her friend Ellen White revealed that Houston was so enamored with Murphy that she made her friends watch his film Coming to America repeatedly. White also said that Murphy and Houston had something special. "I watched them once at a party," she recalled. "Eddie came in. Cameras were flashing, and they just looked at each other, talked, and laughed like they were the only 2 people in the room." Houston's good friend Robin Crawford also addressed Murphy and Houston's relationship in her book, A Song for You, My Life with Whitney Houston. Crawford wrote that, even as Houston was building a relationship with Brown, she was more interested in Eddie Murphy, but he was elusive. Murphy was apparently also invested in Houston. Crawford also wrote that Houston received a phone call from Murphy on the morning of her wedding to Brown. That day, Eddie Murphy called to say she was making a mistake. She wrote, "Then there is Nicole Murphy. Murphy met model Nicole Mitchell in 1988, and the 2 got married in 1993. The couple welcomed 5 children together, daughters Bria, Shane, Zola, and Bella, as well as son Miles." In 2005, Nicole filed for divorce from Murphy after 12 years of marriage. The comedian issued a short statement about their divorce, explaining, "The welfare of our children is our main concern, and their best interest is our first priority." Murphy and Nicole have not commented publicly on what led to their split, but in August 2012, Nicole said that the 2 had a good relationship. "Eddie and I are friends," she told Radar Online after appearing on Season 1 of Hollywood Exes. "He's my baby's daddy, so we speak to each other and have a great relationship, and I think that's important when you have children involved. We can be in the same room and hang out. It's all good." In 2016, Murphy and Nicole proved they were friendly exes when they attended the premiere of their daughter Bria's film Amateur Night together. Next up is Paulette McNeely. Murphy started dating Paulette McNeely sometime in 1989, though little is known about their relationship. On July 10, 1989, the couple welcomed their only child together, a son named Eric, just months before the actor welcomed his first child with Nicole. Then, sometime in 1990, Murphy began seeing Tamara Hood, and the pair welcomed a son, Christian, together in November 1990. While very little is known about Murphy and Hood's relationship, their son Christian has shared photos of him celebrating holidays with Murphy and his half-siblings on Instagram. Another popular name in Murphy's dating roster is Melanie Brown. Murphy dated Melanie Brown, aka Spice Girl Mel B, in 2006, and the two share one daughter named Angel Iris. Although Murphy initially disputed Angel's paternity, Mel B has always insisted that she and Murphy planned their pregnancy and even intended to get married. "This was a completely planned pregnancy," the singer told Essence in 2007. "This wasn't some random, oops, I fell over and I'm pregnant. I don't live my life like that. As soon as I had my IUD removed, we proceeded to get pregnant. It happened quicker than we expected, but it was perfect timing." Murphy confirmed his paternity with a DNA test, and after giving birth, Mel sued Murphy for sole legal and physical custody of Angel. In an interview with Larry King, she explained that the relationship she and Murphy had shared was real. "Our relationship may have been brief, but it was intense," she said. "We were very much in love and wanted to have a family together. That's that. I mean, we're both tattooed. You don't tattoo somebody's name on your body if it's brief and unimportant, let's put it that way." While on the press tour for her book Brutally Honest in November 2018, Mel B said that Murphy was the love of her life. "He always will be. I mean, I've never really spoken about it before, so in this book, I wanted to address it because a lot of people have a misconstrued thing of how everything actually did happen. And at the end of the day, we have a beautiful daughter together, Angel, who is 11 years old, and she's actually staying with him right now while I'm here working." Earlier that year, a source revealed that Murphy is an amazing father to Angel. She texts Eddie and is on the phone with him all the time. She loves her dad. The legendary actor also dated the less popular Tracy Edmonds. Murphy and TV producer Tracy Edmonds shared an intense relationship and a brief, symbolic marriage before they parted ways. The two got engaged in 2007, and Murphy's rep revealed that Tracy and Eddie are both very much in love and are excited about spending the rest of their lives together. The couple were coy with wedding details. Edmonds told reporters, "We want to make it fun and casual, small." They walked down the aisle on January 1st, 2008, on a private French Polynesian island. Edmonds revealed that the ceremony almost didn't happen due to rain, but they took advantage of a short break from the downpour. "It was as if we'd been blessed. We ran to the beach and had just enough time to get married before the raindrops started falling again," she said. "It was simply perfect." Murphy and Edmonds split only 2 weeks after their wedding ceremony. One wedding guest revealed that Murphy didn't seem engaged at the wedding, and another said that the couple fought the entire time. The second guest added that several people could hear them yelling and her crying during the honeymoon evenings. It was pretty dramatic. Some suggested that Murphy's mother, Lillian, didn't like Edmonds. Lillian basically said, "It's me or her," to Eddie, a friend would later reveal. Additional sources added that a combination of issues, including whether Edmonds would change her last name, ultimately led to the relationship's downfall. Murphy and Edmonds announced the end of their relationship in January 2008. After much consideration and discussion, we have jointly decided that we will forgo having a legal ceremony as it is not necessary to define our relationship further. While the recent symbolic union in Bora Bora was representative of our deep love, friendship, and respect that we have for one another on a spiritual level, we have decided to remain friends. The actor's next relationship was with Paige Butcher. In 2012, Murphy began dating Australian model Paige Butcher. The pair welcomed their first child together, daughter Izzy Una, on May 3, 2016. In August 2018, a rep for Murphy confirmed that the actor was expecting his 10th child and second with Butcher. Eddie Murphy and longtime girlfriend Paige Butcher are pleased to announce that they are expecting their second child in December, a rep for Murphy said in a statement. 1 month later, Butcher was seen sporting her baby bump and a large diamond ring while running errands in Los Angeles. A rep for the actor then confirmed that Murphy and Butcher were engaged. The couple welcomed their second child, son Max Charles, on November 30th, 2018. Ahead of their new arrival, a source revealed that the two were very happy to expect another baby. They wished for a younger sibling for their daughter, the source said. They live a pretty low-key life. They are all about family. Paige is very close to Eddie's kids. While the couple don't make many public appearances together, the two turned heads when they stepped out for the Golden Globes on January 10, 2023. Murphy and Butcher, who looked glamorous in coordinating black ensembles, were photographed smiling and holding hands on the red carpet. But of all his relationship dramas, Murphy's incident with a prostitute back in the 1990s left a bad taste in his path. The actor was just 4 years into his marriage to Nicole Mitchell Murphy on May 7, 1997, when police pulled him over at 4:45 a.m. after he picked up a transsexual prostitute, Atisoni Sayuli, aka Shalimar, in his Toyota Land Cruiser at a known homosexual prostitution spot along Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. To set the scene, Murphy's run-in with police was 2 years after the Hugh Grant incident and 6 years after Paul Rubens was arrested in an adult theater, and the public was prime for a new sex scandal, especially one that could imply that the comedian was maybe, gasp, gay because the late 90s were all about outing stars. Murphy, then a 36-year-old movie megastar after making the jump from Saturday Night Live to the big screen, wasn't arrested or charged when he was stopped 2 miles after Sayuli, who was born a male but identified as a female and dressed like a woman, got in his car. An interrogation by deputies determined no illegal activity had occurred. However, his passenger, who police described as a known transsexual prostitute, was picked up on an outstanding prostitution warrant. Murphy walked away from the incident with a clean record, but didn't do himself any favors with his publicist's excuse for his night riding. His spokesperson claimed the actor was merely giving the prostitute a ride home. She asked him for a ride, and Eddie did so like he had helped people in the past. The rep told CNN that Eddie said, "I was trying to be a good Samaritan, and this is what happens." The story made Murphy the punchline. Even SNL aired a sketch with Tim Meadows as Eddie performing community service by saving a transsexual. So the star, who had recently bounced back from a career slump with The Nutty Professor, granted an interview to People magazine, with his lawyer Marty Singer, yes, the guy who repped Bill Cosby, present, for further damage control. Eddie recounted that Nicole and their kids were away, and he had insomnia, so he went for a drive to buy magazines. "I saw this Hawaiian-looking woman and said, 'What are you doing out here?' She said, 'I'm working,'" Murphy recalled of the meeting with the American Samoan Shalimar. "I said, 'You shouldn't be doing that.' And bada bing, I'm never giving anyone a lift again." The actor explained that he thought Addison was a girl, but noted, "That's not even the issue. It wasn't like I was looking for someone. It was a person I assumed was a girl at the corner." He went on to describe the situation as embarrassing, saying, "I'm not sitting around depressed going, 'Oh, people are going to think I'm not Eddie anymore. I'm not a man. I know I'm a man. I'm a man. I'm not ever on the 50 most wonderful list, but I'm not a degenerate either." The Coming to America actor launched into how he was really an undercover Good Samaritan. What people don't know is, for years and years at night, I'd get in my car, I'd drive all over Manhattan, I'd give derelicts money, he claimed. I'd stop and talk to homeless people. I'd go to corners where there are prostitutes and give them $5,000 and $10,000 to go home and get off the street. When I'm doing something charitable, I'm not doing it for publicity. It's out of the goodness of my heart. However, the comedian followed that by bizarrely mentioning how he scrubbed the car clean after Sayuli was taken away by police. Not your typical comment made by a big-hearted humanitarian used to working with the homeless. "I'm obsessive-compulsive with cleanliness," he said. "After I got home, I wiped off the door handle and the stuff that person had touched." The People magazine article noted some wrinkles in the star's story, including the fact that Murphy said he was driving Sayuli home, but they were pulled over after passing his residence. The actor wasn't the only one talking, so was Sayuli. The National Enquirer was said to have paid her $15,000 bail in exchange for her story. Sayuli reportedly told the Tab in an article entitled, "Eddie Murphy's Secret Sex Life. His transvestite hooker tells all," that she was looking for Johns when Murphy drove up. In the car, she claimed he placed 2 $100 bills on her leg and asked if she liked to wear lingerie. When Sayuli said yes, Murphy supposedly asked, "Can I see you in lingerie?" I told him, "Whenever I have the time." He said, "I'll make the time." Sayuli also said they discussed what kind of sex Sayuli liked, to which she replied, "Everything." Murphy ended up suing the National Enquirer and the Globe for $5 million each for libel, slander, and invasion of privacy for publishing interviews with trans prostitutes. Yes, more than one came forward, who claimed to have had sexual relations with the actor. Soon after, he settled the suit with the Globe and then dropped the one against the National Enquirer and had to pay the tabloid's legal fees. Murphy also sued Sayuli's chatty cousin for $1 million for talking to the tabloids. It's unclear what the outcome of that one was. His marriage initially withstood the scandal. He told People magazine that Nicole was shocked at first. She was like, "Oh, Eddie, this could get twisted in all kinds of ways." But they stayed married, having 5 children, before they split in 2005. At the time of their divorce, there were rumors that the scandal was going to rear its ugly head again as they hashed out a settlement. She supposedly wanted more money, but that never materialized. Had she gotten more money, she might have thrown it away anyway. A con man later fleeced her out of $10 million of her divorce settlement. Eddie definitely withdrew from the limelight after the incident. Years later, while appearing on the Hollywood Reporter Awards Chatter podcast, he talked about how he stopped reading stories about himself around the time of the scandal without crediting the scandal for being the reason behind it. "I haven't read a newspaper in 20 years, said Murphy, who had just welcomed his 9th child with girlfriend Paige Butcher. "I don't read stuff about me. If there's an article about me, someone has to read through it before they even give it to me. I don't want to read any of that, so I don't know what y'all think." In that article, he also said he doesn't own a computer, use email, or go on social media. His people actually ran a Twitter account for him. As for Sayuli, she was back in the news almost a year to the date after her arrest with Murphy. That's when she was found dead on a sidewalk, wearing only lingerie, outside her apartment building. The police identified her as female since she had reportedly started to transition. She had apparently locked herself out of her 5th-floor apartment and tried to swing from the roof to her window on a towel and missed. There are conspiracy theories about her death, but it's just conjecture. After she passed away, the Village Voice published some quotes she had reportedly made to a performer shortly before her death, saying she respected Murphy's privacy and hadn't made any money off the scandal. Sayuli added that what she hated the most about the headline-making scandal was being called a drag queen by the press. So, yes, Eddie Murphy has really seen it all. From being a star at 19, to going through a phase of releasing terrible movies, to being involved with a trans woman, to having 10 kids with different women. Yes, it's not easy being Eddie Murphy, but he is still here anyway, and he says he's not done being the superstar people know him for. For now, all we can do is wait and see. And that's it from us today until next time. Thank you for watching.